am going to embarrass her. I have made up my mind. I am going to her house and knock very loud for the whole compound to hear. And tell her once and for all to stop coming to my house every morning to borrow. Salt today. Onions tomorrow. Rice next tomorrow. I am tired. I am very angry. But the moment I opened her door, every word I had prepared to say turned to dust in my mouth. Because I was not ready for what I saw on the other side. My name is Angela. And this is the day my neighbor's suffering broke me and made me a different woman. Let me tell you about myself first, so you understand. I am not a bad person. I want to say that clearly.
I'm gonna score the winning
I work.
goal.
I pay my bills.
Not if I get it first.
I take care of my children, 2 boys, 6 and 9, and I mind my business. We live in a decent estate in Abuja.
Mom,
Not rich,
can we watch
not
the
struggling.
cartoon now?
The kind of compound where everyone knows everyone. My husband Chris travels for work. He is away most times. So, it is me and my boys. We are organized and we are always prepared. Most importantly, we do not borrow from our neighbors. The problem moved in March last year. Her name was Mama John. Although I will not know that until later. The first time I saw her, she was carrying a single bag into the flat next to mine. Only one bag. No furniture. No help. Just her and 3 small children following her like duck fowl. I noticed but I didn't say anything. In this compound, we mind our business. The first morning, she knocked on my door around 6:30. Please, my sister, do you have small salt? Just small. I will give you back. I gave her salt. But she came back the next morning. Another day. Over and over again. By the 3rd month, I started to hide from her. Now, I checked through the curtain first. Before I answered the door. My friend Dorcas thought it was a joke. She said, Angela, the woman is just borrowing salt, she's not after your soul, don't panic. But it wasn't just the salt. It was the consistency. Every morning. Without fail. Without shame. I have to be worried. I have a budget for my groceries. I know exactly how much salt I had, how many onions, 1 full bag of rice, now it's almost finished. And every morning, one small thing would vanish into her flat and never return. I am really troubled. Oh God, help me. I was not the only one who had noticed. A new tenant, Copper Blessing, that just moved in 1 week ago, also said Mama John borrowed 2 cups of rice and palm oil. Oga Emmanuel said his wife had given her tomatoes 3 times. At the compound meeting in April, someone said something, I want to be clear, not me. Like and subscribe for God's grace and favor, amen. Let me continue. Someone in the meeting suggested that we should talk to Mama John to manage her family and mind her business. The landlord said yes. And everyone agreed. But truth be told, Mama John, the main problem was not at the meeting. She was never at the compound meetings. And I wondered why. Friday morning really broke me. I have guests coming for dinner. My sister and her husband were visiting from Kaduna. I have planned everything. The pot was on fire. The jollof rice and chicken was almost ready. Then my neighbor knocked again. My sister, please help me with small onion. Only 1. I felt something snap inside me. But I gave her the onion. This time, after I closed the door, I did not go back to my cooking. I stood there. And I said to myself, today, I am going to end this. I am going to follow her to her house. I am going to talk to her. Woman to woman. Enough. I waited for 5 minutes after she left. I stopped everything I was doing and followed her behind. Her door was only few steps from mine. The compound was quiet. Most people have left for work or school. As I walked, I was thinking about what I would say in my head. Something firm. Something fair. Something that would end the borrowing once and for all without sounding rude. As I raised my hand to knock, I heard something from inside. A child crying. Not the crying of a child who wants something. The crying of a child who has been crying for so long they no longer expect an answer. I stood at the door weak like a worm. The door opened before I knocked. Mama John heard my footsteps and she opened it and looked at me, and in that moment, I saw something in her face. Not surprised. Not embarrassed. Just stress and sadness. The door was open, and I could see inside. I want to describe it to you carefully, because the details matter. The room was one room. Not a flat with rooms. One room. 3 children, the youngest was around 2, sitting on the only bench. No mattress. No mat. Only cement. In one corner, there was a curtain that was just a wrapper tied to a nail. A man was standing, looking sick. So I asked her, I said, "What's wrong with him?" She said, "He has chronic stroke and he can't do anything." I stood at the door for a long time. Long enough to take in everything I had not been willing to see for 3 months. 1 plastic bucket with water. A small kerosene stove with no kerosene in it. 3 small uniforms hanging on the wall and very well ironed. How she had ironed them, I don't know. There was no iron I could see. A Bible, open, on the table. And on the one small table in the room I saw a single raw onion. My onion. The one she had just borrowed. It was sitting on an empty plate, waiting to become a meal. A whole meal. For 3 children and a dying man. I couldn't say a single word. I froze. I don't know when the tears started. I became aware of them when Mama John pressed a cloth into my hand to wipe my face. The woman I had come to confront was comforting me. She said, "Please don't cry. I am managing." Managing. That word hit me like a stone. She was managing with no food, no furniture, no help, a dying husband, and 3 children who needed school fees and breakfast and a future. And every morning she had been borrowing, not because she was lazy, not because she was shameless, but because the small borrowed onion, the small salt, gave her family hope and kept them alive. While I was busy counting my salt, she has been counting her children's meals. I sat down on her cement floor and I cried like a child. Slowly, between long silences, she told me. Her husband, Mr. Daniel, her husband on the floor, was a mechanic. 8 months ago, a car had fallen on him while he was walking underneath it. It had broken 3 things in his spine. And it caused stroke. The surgery would cost 15 million naira. We have sold everything. Their furniture. Her jewelry. His tools. They had moved from their 2-bedroom flat to this room because the rent was lower. Her eldest, a boy of 10, had stopped going to school to hog sachet water. She woke every morning at 4 a.m. to braid hair for women in the market. And whatever she made, she used it for his medication. What about the salt? The onions. The rice. She had spent the last of her money on his drugs the week she moved in. She had nothing left for the kitchen. Nothing. I always planned to replace everything, she said. I kept a list. The boy came home at 7:30 am. His name was John. He was 10 years old and he was carrying a tray of sachet water on his head. He was wearing his school uniform well pressed, like the others on the wall, but he was not going to school. He had put on the uniform because his mother asked him to. So that he would remember, every day, that school was where he belonged. Even when he could not go. He looked at me with calm eyes, the eyes of a child who has seen too much too quickly. And said, "Good morning, Ma." Then he put down his tray, and handed the money quietly to his mother. 800 naira. He had been out since 6 am. For 800 naira. I could not speak. I could not speak at all. I left her flat at 9 am. My food was ready. My sister was coming for dinner. I walked back in a different body. Yes, I came back a different woman. I turned off the stove. I opened my kitchen cupboard. I took out a bag of rice, a bag of gari, tin tomatoes, salt, seasoning, a full bottle of groundnut oil, onions, 3 yams. I put them in a bag. I went back. I knocked. When she opened the door, she looked at the bag and started to shake her head. I said, "It is not your fault. None of this is your fault. Please. Let me." She sat down on the ground and cried. I have never felt more human in my life. My sister arrived from Kaduna at noon. I met her at the compound gate, and before she could even put down her bag, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Show me her house. We are not having dinner today." Instead, my sister and I went back to the market. She bought a foam mattress. I bought bed sheets and a pillow. We bought kerosene. We bought enough food for 2 weeks. So I called my husband. I told him about our neighbor's dying husband. He said, "Find out what hospital he needs. I will handle the transportation and open a GoFundMe account to help the man." Just like that. For your information, my husband is the sweetest. When we carried the foam mattress through Mama John's door, her youngest child, the 2-year-old, ran to it before we had even put it down. She just ran to it and lay flat on it and spread her arms wide. Like she was greeting something she had forgotten existed. That child had been sleeping on cement since March. It was now April. 1 month. 1 month on cement floors because her mother did not want to bother anyone, did not want to ask for too much, did not want to be a burden. I thought about all the mornings I hid behind my curtain. All the mornings I had sighed and handed over the salt and closed the door rudely. And I thought, what if I asked her earlier? What if any of us had asked earlier, instead of judging? My husband arranged a driver. 2 days later, Mr. Daniel was in a proper hospital in a real facility with a proper orthopedic unit in Abuja. After hearing the full story, the women in the compound who criticized her at the meeting moved to action. Mama Esther organized a food rotation, different flats bringing food for the children every day. Oga Emmanuel's wife went and enrolled John back in school. She paid the fees herself, quietly, and told no one until I am telling you now. The estate landlord reduced the rent. The same landlord that wanted to investigate her at the meeting. I've come to realize that people are not monsters. They just need someone to open the first door. The morning John went back to school was a Wednesday. He wore the same pressed uniform. But this time, he was not wearing it to remember what he was missing. He was wearing it because he was going. His mother stood at the door and watched him walk out of the compound. She had her hand over her mouth the entire time. I was watching from my corridor. I had told my boys about John. My first son gave him pencils and wrote a very kind words of encouragement for him. Mr. Daniel's recovery was not fast. It was not a miracle story. Not the kind where a man walks out of hospital the next week. It was slow. It was physiotherapy, medication, long nights and setbacks. But 6 months later, he could sit up. 8 months later, he could stand with support. A year later, he walked slowly, with a stick from his flat to mine. He knocked on my door. When I opened it, he said, "My wife told me what you did. I came to say thank you." I told him, "Your wife taught me more than I gave her." He didn't fully understand what I meant. But you do. You understand, right? I think about that day many times since. About who I was when I followed her behind the first time. I was not a cruel woman. I want to be clear about that. But I was an impatient one. I was a woman so busy protecting her space and her foodstuffs, I had completely stopped looking at the person standing at my door. I was looking at the inconvenience. We do this. We do this every day. The person who takes too long at the counter. The colleague who asks too many questions. The family member who calls too often. We label them. We categorize them. We manage our relationship to them. And all the while, behind their door, behind their eyes, behind their inconvenient request, there is a story we have not thought to ask about. A war we cannot see. A child sleeping on bare floor. Waiting for someone to save her. Mama John still lives next to me. They have not borrowed salt in a long time. Not because she stopped needing things, life is still hard for her. But because we stopped pretending we were not neighbors. My boys play with her children on Saturday mornings. John is in JSS 2 now. He wants to be an engineer. Alex fixes small things around the compound when he can. And sometimes in the early morning, before the estate wakes up, I will see her at her door, watching the sunrise, and I usually sit with her when I can. We don't always speak. Sometimes we just stand there, two women in the early morning quiet, and that is okay. I am telling you this story because somewhere near you there is a person managing. Managing on nothing. They are smiling so you won't worry. They borrow small things so their children can eat. Before you count your salt, ask. Just ask. Neighbor, are you okay? 3 words. They cost nothing. They can change everything. Thank you for watching. Please share this. Someone near you needs to hear it.